Tuesdays, everyone. My name is Vaibhav Patel. I'm a principal migration agent at Aussizz Group. I hope everybody had enjoyed today's Melbourne Cup race, and I hope everyone is having fun today. And it's a very good day. And obviously, I'm also coming up with a very good news that recently we have come across the announcement from the department that they will be expanding the pathways for permanent visas through 482 visa under the TSS stream, especially for a short-term stream visa holders where they could not apply for 186 visa under TRT stream previously. Now they can. So today's topic is also about employer sponsorship visa. So we are not only going to cover the news, but we are also going to cover 482 visa, 186 visa, both of the streams, 186 TRT stream and direct entry stream, and 494 visa, which is a regional employer sponsorship visa. And if you have any questions while we present our information, you can always put in your questions in the comment box. And at the end of my explanation, then I'll come to the question. So I'll open the floor for you to leave all your questions, and we can then address individual questions from our viewers. So without any fail, now let's start with the explanation about 482 visa under the employer sponsorship streams. There are certain visas, which is subclass 482, which is basically a work visa. Now, 482 has got two sub streams, which is either a short-term skilled occupation list. If your occupation is on a short-term skilled occupation list, you are on TSS 482 in a short-term stream. And if your occupation is on a medium and long-term skill list, then you are on 482 TSS medium and long-term stream, right? So the difference between these two streams are that subclass 482 short-term stream, you'll only get maximum of 2 years visa. And subclass 482 TSS medium and long-term stream, you'll get up to 4 years visa, depending on what your company is going to choose. And also, as of now, the 482 TSS short-term stream does not have a PR pathway, and maximum visa that you can get onshore is only 2. So that means if you apply one visa onshore and then you can renew it for one more time, that's it. And then if you want to renew it for third time, you'll have to apply for an application offshore, not onshore. That is also going to change from November 25th, most likely, subject to the regulation passing through the the legislation. Sorry, subject to the approval of the legislation. And if that goes through, that means you'll also have that limit removed. That means then you can have as many as 482s on the short-term stream renewed onshore. Right. So now let's get into the details about what is 482 visa and how it works. So 482 visa, as I said, it's mainly a company-sponsored visa. So there are 3 steps to it. Number 1 is the standard business sponsorship. So any company that is going to employ an applicant, or any company which is willing to sponsor a person because they are not able to find a local person to fulfill that role, will have to apply for it to become a standard business sponsor. Basically, what company has to prove in this standard business sponsorship application is that they're lawfully operating in Australia. So they do so by providing their business registration documents, their financial documents, and lease agreements, etc., just to prove that they're operating lawfully in Australia. Then the step 2 is the company will have to apply for a nomination. In the nomination, the company first have to justify that before they decide to nominate, they have advertised the position and conducted a labor market testing, unless it is exempted. In certain circumstances, the labor market testing can be exempted. But in most of the cases, let's say, you might have to complete a labor market test. So the company will have to first advertise the position, run the recruitment drive, and try to find a suitable local Australian person for this role, like someone who is an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. Now, if this recruitment drive works well and they get a suitable candidate, well and good. But if they don't, that means there's a skill shortage of this particular skills in Australia. And therefore, the company now is opting for an 482 visa pathway to sponsor an overseas worker. Now, that overseas worker could be in Australia on temporary visa, or that overseas worker could be outside Australia on, in any country, as long as they're skilled. Right. So that's the first thing. The company will have to advertise the position on 3 different platforms and complete the labor market testing. And one has to be the government advertisement website, which is Job Search or Workforce. And then the next part is in this nomination, the company will have to provide choose an occupation, nominate that occupation, that this is the particular occupation. We advertise this occupation. We couldn't find anybody. That's why we decided to sponsor. Then they have to also provide an explanation about the duties that that person is going to perform under this occupation. And it has to, they have to ensure that the occupation that they've chosen is in line with the skill duties of that person that they're going to do at work. So you have to make sure that you choose an appropriate occupation. If you don't choose an appropriate occupation, you can still be rejected under the nomination. And the nomination can, if nomination gets refused, obviously the visa will also be in trouble because it's linked. So the first step is sponsorship. Second one is nomination. In nomination, we are talking about position description, which has to be, we have to ensure that we choose the right occupation against the position description. The third important part is that the company will have to provide their financial documents and their evidence that the business will be able to employ this person for next 2 years or 4 years, and will have a financial capacity to pay this employee for next 2 years or 4 years according to the proposed salary. And also the company will have to provide an employment agreement for this particular job and ensure that the salary that they're paying is according to the market rate. So they can't pay anything less than what they would have paid an Australian employee. So that's one more part that they have to ensure. And the third part is the visa application. So that's the nomination. Also in nomination, the company will have to also pay a nomination application fees, which is generally $330. But on top of it, the company will have to pay an SAF levy, which is called Skilled Australian Fund Levy. The companies will have to pay this SF levy for every nomination they launch. That means every person they sponsor. Now, how this works is that the company's turnover will determine how much they have to pay. If the turnover is less than 10 million, they will have to pay $1,800 per year. So let's say the company wants to sponsor someone as a software engineer for 4 years and their turnover is less than 10 million. They'll have to pay 1,800 into 4. Sorry, 1,200 into 4. So that becomes 4,800 plus the nomination application fee, which is 330. And if the turnover of the company is more than 10 million, they have to pay $1,800 per year, which comes to 7,200 plus the nomination application fees. And this funds generally the government then will use to train people in this particular skills. So it's a fund where the company is contributing the money to, and obviously this is non-refundable if your nomination gets refused. So it's a bit you have to be very sure and be very cautious when you're lodging the application because it's an expensive one. The next part is the visa application. In the visa application, the first criteria is that the applicant has to ensure that they have relevant skills and qualification for that particular occupation. Let's say, as an example, if you are getting sponsored as a software engineer, you have to have the qualification related to software engineer. And also, you have to have at least minimum 2 years full-time work experience. And if you don't have a full-time, you have to have equivalent part-time experience. That means at least 4 years full-time experience, part-time experience, if you don't have a full-time experience. And this has to be post-qualification. So, but in some cases, we can look into whether you can use the pre-qualification experience. Sometimes what happens is, let's say somebody's got a bachelor degree overseas, and then they have worked, and then they are studying masters, and they've worked during the masters as well. Then they can probably use that work experience as well. Also, you have to have an English language score. Generally, you need at least 5 bands in this for 482 visa. But again, if you're on a short term, you need 5 overall, minimum 4.5. And if you are on medium and long term list, then you need 5 at least in each module. So the English requirement will also change depending on your occupation list. So that's about 482 visa. Now, if you get a 482 visa, you have to work with your company. The condition of this visa is that you cannot work for anyone else apart from the sponsoring entity who last sponsored you. Now, in unlikely situation where, let's say you got 4 years visa, maybe 2 years later, your company decides to lay you off, or you are not really happy with the employer because you don't like working there, for whatever reasons, if you get an opportunity with some other company, you can still change the company. What you need to do is your new company will have to apply for a sponsorship and nomination. If they already have the sponsorship, they don't have to apply for a new one. They just have to lodge a nomination. And such nomination applications generally gets priority in processing. So we see most of the times that 1 or 2 weeks, you get a nomination transfer approved. So it's not a transfer, but it's a new nomination lodged by a new employer. and then you can start working for the new employer. Right? If you have to serve the notice period, yes, it is still not considered a breach. If you have to serve a notice period in transition, that is allowed. But generally, generally the employees will have to ensure that they do not work while on 482 visa for anyone else apart from the sponsoring entity. A lot of sometimes people also get confused whether they can run their own business. I would say no, because that is also a sort of an employment. You probably are investing only, that's fine, but you cannot hold any position in any other company, even if it is your own company, right? The next part is, now let's say if you get a 482 visa, until now, if you're on a short term, as I said before, if you're on 482 short term list, then you cannot apply for a 186 visa under TRT stream. So now the next part that we are going to discuss is 186 visa. In the 186 visa, there are two pathways. One is a TRT stream and another one is a direct entry stream. So TRT stream is for the applicants who have worked on 482 visa with their sponsoring entity for at least 3 years, which is going to change to 2 years now from 25th of November, most likely. So if the legislation gets approved, it will be reduced to 2 years. And it will also open up the door for applicants who could not apply because they were on a short term. Now they can also apply for 160 TRT stream. So as of now, if you're on 482 visa, if you are only on a medium and long term list, then only you can apply for a 186 visa under TRT stream. Provided that the legislation get approved from 25th of November, if you're on short term as well, your company can apply for a 186 visa under TRT stream for you as well. Now, what we do is, let's say, as of now, so if you're applying for 186 visa, there are two steps. Number one is nomination. Again, company will have to apply for a nomination. Company will have to pay a nomination application fees. And again, the company will have to pay an SAF levy, which is, if the turnover is less than 10 million, they have to pay flat $3,000 for SAF levy. And if the turnover is more than 10 million, they have to pay $5,000 as an SAF levy. Now, once the nomination is lodged, again, similar documents will go, which is position description. Then the company will have to also provide an explanation on why this position is required. They have to provide an explanation about their financial condition, organization chart, explain the entire case that why they need to sponsor this employee. And there is a genuine need of, and there is a genuine skill shortage in their business, and therefore they've opted for these options. Then they have to provide an employment agreement. Again, the salary has to be according to the market rate. And they have to also provide an explanation that how did they reach this salary amount. And they have to ensure that it is research with market, or either there is an award that is applicable, so they are paying under the award. They lodge a nomination. Then the next part is the visa application. In the visa application, the applicant will have to provide an evidence that they have at least IELTS minimum 6 each or equivalent score, which is basically computer English. And they also have to provide an evidence that they have worked with their sponsoring employer for at least 3 years as of now. And provided that the regulation changes in 25th of November, then it will be at least minimum 2 years. And your occupation has to be on the list for a 186 visa. Now, the next stream in 186 visa is a direct entry stream. Under the direct entry stream, again, there are two steps the company will have to follow. Number one, the company will have to apply for a nomination. And number two, the applicant will have to apply for the visa. Now, to apply for a 186 visa under direct entry stream, the current criteria says your occupation has to be on a medium and long-term skill list. That means if your occupation is on a short-term skill list, you cannot apply for a 186 visa under the direct entry stream. Now, again, the company will have to also advertise the position, demonstrate that they tried to look for an Australian citizen. They couldn't find anyone, and then only they've decided to sponsor someone who is either a temporary visa holder or who is based in overseas. Now, the company will again have to provide their business registration documents, financial documents in the nomination as well for 186 direct entry stream. They have to also provide explanation about the labor market testing. They have to provide an evidence that they have advertised the position for on 3 different platforms. There is no legal requirement of labor market testing, but as a part of the genuine position, the department says that we would like to see the labor market testing conducted, so that we can, that helps you in proving that your application or your application is genuine and you had put in the genuine efforts to find a local employee, right? So labor market testing is not defined in this 186 visa requirements, but it is still recommended that you do that labor market testing as an employer, or if you're getting a sponsor from your company, make sure that the company is suggested to do this. Then the company will have to provide a position description for the roles and responsibilities that you're going to perform, and it has to match the nominated occupation. And we also have to ensure that the nominated occupation is on a medium and long-term list, and the duties that is mentioned in the position description is in line with the NZS code description. Then the company will have to provide an employment agreement, and the employment agreement again has to have the market salary rate, and they cannot pay you anything less than what is in the market, right? Or if there is an award applicable, then they can simply pay under the award. And then the company will have to provide further explanation about the financials, that they have to justify that they're financially strong, how many people are working in the company, and just to show that yes, the company is lawfully operating and has a financial capacity to pay the employee for at least next 2 years. And the employment agreement for 186 visa under direct entry stream or tier 2 stream has to be at least minimum 2 years full time, without precluding from it to being extended on a permanent basis. Now, the next part in this 186 visa as well is the visa application. In the visa application, the applicant has major 3 criteria that they have to satisfy. Number 1, that they have to have the positive skills assessment for the nominated occupation. So obviously, if you are going to apply for 186 visa, and even if your company is going to nominate you, first recommendation is that you obtain a skills assessment so that you're sure that when you apply for a visa, you don't get any surprises that you don't have skill assessment. Second is competent English. You need minimum IELTS 6 each or equivalent, and you need at least minimum 3 years full-time work experience. And again, if you have a part-time, whatever is part-time is actually counted on a pro rata basis. So basically 1 year part-time is 6 months full-time. So if someone's got, let's say, 2 years full-time experience and 2 years part-time experience, total it becomes 3 years full-time, because 2 years full-time is full-time, and 2 years part-time becomes 1 year full-time. That's total 3 years. So you have to ensure that you have minimum 3 years full-time work experience. Now, 186 visa is really good option if you are already working in your company, and if there is a skill shortage of your occupation, definitely it's really a good option. So if you are already working with a company in your nominated occupation, you might want to explore the employer sponsorship visas, including 482 or 186. And the last and the third visa that we are going to discuss under the employer sponsorship category is the 494. Now, if you have a 482 and 186 visa option available, you would not really choose the 494, because 494 is mainly focused on the applicants who would not qualify for a 482 and 186, because if you qualify for 482 and 186, you would go for those visas because it gives you more advantages. And 494 is for the occupations which are on regional occupation list as well. And also the 494 is for the employers who are based in regional Australia. So if your employer is based in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane, your company cannot sponsor you for 494. Your company can only sponsor you if your company is located in regional Australia, which is excluding Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. Now, there are actually many steps. So number 1, your company will have to apply for a standard business sponsorship again for a 494 as well. The company will also have to do the labor market testing and ensure that they try to look for an Australian citizen. They couldn't find anybody, therefore they decided to sponsor and opt for the 494 option. Now, the second one is the company will have to apply for an RCB approval. Wherever the company is operating, there is a regional certifying body. They have to apply and provide the documentation of their skill shortages that they're facing and efforts that they've provided for recruitment, and then justify that they really need someone under the 494. They have to utilize this pathway to continue to operate their business and fulfill these skill shortages. Then the company will have to apply for the third step, which is nomination. In the nomination, the company will have to again justify that they've done the labor market testing, which is advertising the position on 3 different platforms for at least 28 days. Second criteria is that the company will have to also provide an evidence that the company has offered an employee a salary that is according to the market rate. Now, let's say a good example that you can apply for 494 is retail manager. Let's say someone's working as a retail manager in a petrol station in Sydney. They don't really seem to have much option, but they get an opportunity to work in the regional area, and the company is not able to find anybody who is local Australian citizen or permanent resident for this role, and the company is happy to sponsor. Now, if you have an experience as a retail manager for 3 years, your company can sponsor you for, like the new company that you would go for can sponsor you for 494 visa. Now, so the next step would be nomination. So let's assume a retail manager is as an option or as an example. So retail company would sponsor you as a retail manager. So the company will have to provide a position description of a retail manager. The company will have to justify that they really have a position of a retail manager. Companies like, let's say, for example, any pizza shops or fast food chains or even petrol stations would generally justify the need of a retail full-time retail manager, because they would need that. Even a retail shops like furniture shops can also justify. Even, let's say, a small grocery store can also justify a retail manager role. So basically, those are the companies would probably employ a retail manager and would want to sponsor. So if you have 3 years of work experience, as I said, you can probably look for a 494 option under this employer sponsorship category. Now, the next part is the visa application, which is the last part, where the company don't really have much to do. The visa applicant would have to provide three major evidences apart from health and character. Number one is that they have to provide an evidence that they have a positive skills assessment for the nominated occupation. Let's say in our example, it's a retail manager. So retail manager is assessed by VETASS. So the applicant will have to first apply for a skills assessment with VETASS, obtain a positive skill assessment. Second criteria is that the applicant has to have at least competent English, which is IELTS 6 each or equivalent. And the third criteria is that the applicant will have to have minimum 3 years full-time work experience. Right. So, and then the 494 is granted for 5 years. And the condition is that you have to work with the sponsoring entity in the regional area, which has sponsored you. But after working 3 years with the sponsoring entity, you can apply for a 191 visa. And in 191 visa, you just have to simply prove that you have been working with your sponsoring entity on a 494 visa for at least 3 years, and that's all. So, and you have lived and worked in the regional area and complied with your visa condition, which is 494. Right. So now I will open up the floor for questions. So I'll start taking questions from our social media channels. So we are live in different channels. So I'm getting questions throughout from YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. So we pick questions one by one. So the question is from Nitesh. To apply for a 189 visa, do we need work experience? So Nitesh, just to let you know that this session is specially dedicated for an employer sponsorship visa. So we would appreciate questions related to the company sponsorship. But to answer your questions, 189 visa does not really require you to have work experience. It's not a compulsory requirement. If you do have the work experience, it will help you in adding more points. I hope that answers the questions. Question from Bilal. Hello, sir. I am a CA qualified from Pakistan. If I do the civil construction design diploma on fast track with PT 8 each NATI, what are the 189 chances? I'm living in Sydney. Should I stay in Sydney or move to Perth? What do you suggest? Now, so Mr. Bilal, again, the question is related to skill visa. And as I said, our session is about employer sponsorship visa. But I'll still, to answer your question, if you are confident on getting maximum points, which is like, let's say, getting 8 each in PT, CCL, and also, let's say, finding a job in Sydney, then, there is not really necessary that you have to move. But yes, sometimes what happens is certain states would give you an advantage. But again, the thing is, it's all futuristic, right? Because if you move now, let's say Western Australia's criteria right now is easy to get nomination. But down the time when you complete the course, what if those criteria are no longer there? So, and the same thing applies to Sydney as well. Let's say that right now you are getting a nomination in New South Wales easily in civil engineering, but down the time when you complete the course, what if you don't? But most of the times, the candidates who can get superior English can pass CCL exam and is very confident about finding employment in their field. Generally, they don't really have to worry about the location most of the times. Even if you live in Sydney, you will be able to apply one or the other way. You'll be able to apply for a permanent visa. So I would say you don't have to move if you don't want to, but it depends on your personal choice as well as your ability to meet all these criteria. A question from Amar. Are there any specific industries or states where employment nomination visas are more commonly issued to avoid rejections? So, Mr. Amar, good question. Honestly, there is nothing like that. But obviously, if you are in regional areas, your chances of refusals are less. just it has nothing to do with the location, but because the job market in the regional area is less competitive, and obviously there are less population. So there is my viewpoint is that yes, there might be a bit of advantage, but honestly, if your company is really having a good turnover, good financial capacity to pay you, so even if the company is located in Sydney or Melbourne or any big cities, they can still sponsor and avoid a rejection. See, the rejection chances increases when your documentation are not properly provided, or if your company has not provided enough explanation in your nomination, or you have not provided certain documents, right? As long as your justification, because you have to provide an explanation about why the company needs this person and how this position is genuine. So if you can justify that, we don't see much of a challenge in getting approval in 482 or 486 visas or 494 visas. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Rama. Thank you very much for asking a very good question about that. Next question is from Nitesh again. I have 85 points for 189 and 90 points for 190. Currently employed as a chemical engineer in WA. How good are my chances to get an invitation? Look, I think your chances are really great, Nitesh, because in WA if they start inviting when they start inviting your kind of profile, and especially because you're employed in your area, in your field of nominated occupation, your chances of getting approval is higher. The next question is from Anand. So can you please explain the rights and responsibilities of visa holders while working in Australia under the employment nomination visa? So very good question again, Anand. So under the employer sponsorship visa, you must get paid according to your employment agreement, and that employment agreement has to be also according to the market rate. That means you cannot get underpaid. Your company will have to pay you what equal to what they would have paid an Australian employee to do the same job, right? So that is called equivalent terms and condition of the employment. And not only that, your employers cannot ask you to work more than your according to your agreement. So you have to simply work. Let's say they can't ask you to work 50 hours a week, for example, if your employment agreement is 40 hours a week and you're only getting remuneration for only 40 hours a week, then you don't have to. So that's your right. If you're not getting any fair work conditions, you can also complain about your employer or apply for a fair work as well. So those are your rights. And working your partners, let's say, for example, if you're on a 482 visa, your partner can work full time as well. So if you have a partner who is accompanying you, they get a full working rights too. And if you have any particular question about particular matter about employment rights, you can ask me again. I am happy to take that on as well. A question from Manish: what is the current status of the Australian job market, and is it favorable for employment nomination visas application? Yes, Manish, I don't think we have seen much of a refusals, in fact, I don't think I've seen hardly, more than, I haven't even seen more than one refusal in last 12 months or 15 months, So myself, so obviously I would assume that the nomination applications right now under the employer sponsorship, the job market is really great. If you have a right skills, and if your employer is not able to find a suitable candidate for your role, then definitely going for an employer sponsorship visa is very good option at the moment. And looking at the government making it even easier, the chances are that you can easily get approvals for these visas as long as you meet the criteria. The question from Morsalim is: hi, can you please comment on recent 190 grants? Recently, they have reduced the processing time to 9 months. I have applied on January and got commencement mail on September. It has been more than 9 months for me. When can I expect the grant? Now, Morsalim, the processing time is very uneven right now. But since you've got the email from the department that your application has been allocated to the case officer and it's already in further processing, you can expect an outcome anytime. Now, how it works is the department has a set number of visas to be granted each year, right? So let's say in 190 visa, this year they're going to grant, for example, 20,000 visas. So that 20,000 visas could be, let's say, the applicants who have lodged 1 year ago as well, and applicants who have lodged in 9 months ago. So all those applicants will be decided in this financial year, right? So whatever applications are finalized in this financial year would go count in this financial year's grants. So sometimes what happens is, because they get a less allocations, if they have a less allocation, that means the processing time will go up. Even though the average processing time is 9 months, advertised processing time, it doesn't have to be always the same processing time. But if you have, like, let's say, in cases where you're losing an opportunity for employment, things like this, you can always request the department to see if they can finalize your application. And you can upload a letter to your application as well, where we generally do that if we exceed the processing time significantly, not like 9 months, but if, let's say, the advertised processing time is 9 months and our client has been waiting for more than 12 months, we would probably write a letter to the department and ask them if, for explaining the client's situation and what is costing them for waiting so long. And if the department considers it, they would generally process the application on a priority. The next question is from Myth. Once the company sponsors us, how long does it take for one to become eligible for a PR? So, Myth, my answer to your question is, as of now, is 3 years. So if you work on 482 visa for 3 years, you can apply for 186 visa under TRT stream. If the rules changes on 25th of November, subject to the regulation approval, then it will become 2 years. So that means it will reduce to, instead of 3 years, it will reduce to 2 years, right? So for now it's 3 years. Hopefully from November onwards, it will be 2 years. Next question is from Sita. I have applied for lodged an EOI with 65 points and my occupation is electronics engineer. Should I expect 190? Now, Sitar, most likely your invitation at 65 points is very less chances because, your like 190 visa is competitive in all states basically. And most of the times you're ranked based on your points, your occupation, your English language ability, your employment. So all those factors contributes to it. But the major factor is your points. If you have only 65 points, your chances is really low because there are thousands of applicants even more with more points than you. So that's why the chances would be probably less. Next question is from Saad. What is the future of 189 and will there be 189 round soon? Mr. Saad, yes, it's very hard to predict, but I'm hoping that there will be a 189 invitation round. And we are also, hoping that there might be a major reforms in upcoming year or financial year. And if that happens, yes, obviously the things will change. But as of now, 189 definitely there should be some rounds, and we are expecting that probably it should start from the new year. Next question is from Mr. Mustafa. Hey, I'm pursuing my certificate 4 in fabrication. I will complete it by August 2024 and complete my skills assessment by end of 2025. What are my chances for 190 Victoria? If you're in Victoria and if you're studying fabrication, I think you're not only 190, your chances for 189 as well is really good. And obviously, provided that you have sufficient points to compete with the candidates at that time. But as of now, we don't see many EOIs in fabrication industry. So obviously, the competition is low in your particular occupation. So that means you'll have more advantage because there are less traffic in your occupation. The next question is from Gilbert. I own the tech company. So what are the common challenges or obstacles that business might encounter during the employment combination visa application process? So Gilbert, generally the most important part is the cost that you have to understand, because if you want to sponsor someone, let's say because you're not able to find a local employee to fulfill the skill shortages, then the first is the cost associated with the nomination and sponsorship, because you cannot transfer that cost to an employee. That means the business will have to pay for all the cost that is associated with sponsorship and nomination of that visa. The second part is, let's say if you sponsor someone, you have to be really sure that the candidate is the right candidate for you to work, because if you spend so much money and then later on if you realize that this candidate is not the right candidate for the business, then you would have ended up spending so much money for nothing, right? And also there are certain obligations that your business will have to meet under the sponsorship obligations. So there's a list of sponsorship obligations mentioned on the department's website, but the key ones are, let's say you have to ensure that you pay according to the market rate, you pay according to their employment agreements and terms and conditions. If we have seen a lot of employers getting sponsorship cancellations and bans because they simply missed out to pay the employee according to their terms, or the employee's salary had changed but the payroll did not get reflected, things like this. So there are certain sponsorship obligations that you have to be very curious, very careful about. Otherwise, utilizing, if your company is facing a skill shortages in the business, definitely using the employer sponsorship visas is the right pathway to fulfill the skill shortages in the business. Questions from Saad. I have 95 points and awaiting 189 and 190, 189 and 100 points for 190 in New South Wales. And NSW is only conducting targeted occupations, targeted rounds. Should I opt for 491 then? Now, it also depends on your occupation, Mr. Saad, whether your occupation is in the target sector. If not, yes, I would consider 491, but provided because you have 100 points, you might really get a good, you have a good chances or good prospects in near future that you might get 190. But if you really want to play safe, yes, I always suggest take 491 if you don't want to risk it. Because one bird in a hand or two birds on a tree, what do you want? So sometimes you just want one bird in your hand to ensure that at least you don't lose this one, right? So, but yes, you are in a very right position for 189 and 190. So I would not really encourage you a lot to apply for 491, but if you want to play safe, you can opt for it. The next question is from Sunny. Early childhood teacher, 75 points, 190 MSW, chances are. So the chances for teachers, 75 points. See, the last invite in the last financial year we've got is, I think, around 65 to 70 points. So yes, your chances are really great, as soon as the NSW will start inviting a lot of candidates. And generally in last 2 years, 2 financial years, we have noticed that, NSW keeps the major invitation rounds in the, second half of the financial year. That means after December, you'll see, some movements. That has been the history in last 2 years. So I'm hoping that, January onwards, you'll probably see more invitation rounds, and, you might even see the more invitations. And generally, overall, there is a skill shortages in teaching occupations. So hopefully, NSW will also address that for you. And but you should try and increase your points, because when there is a long waiting, the occupation, that the applicants keep piling up, and the applicants with higher points will also be there to compete with you. So that would probably give you a bit of competition. So I would suggest, while you're waiting, you should try and increase your points if you can. Question from Suman. Can I show my offshore experience for 482 visa? Is part-time considered? Yes. So good question. Yes, you can use experience from anywhere in the world. Doesn't have to be in Australia to meet the requirement for 482, which is 2 years of full-time experience. And the part-time experience is considered. As I said in my explanation, that any part-time experience is calculated on pro rata basis. That means if it is 12 months part-time, it becomes 6 months full-time. The next question is from Sanat. What are the implications for family members of visa holders? Can they also apply for visas to accompany the primary visa holder? Yes, as I mentioned earlier, you can bring family on 482 visa or 186 visa or 494 visa, and your family pretty much have the same visa condition as you, except on 482 visa, your family member does not have to work for the same company that sponsored you. They can work for any employer, but they can work full time, they can study. So basically, they have pretty much, you can bring the family, and they have a lot of, there is no restrictions basically, except that the health insurance has to be maintained, and you have to, comply with your visa conditions and etc. But that's pretty much it. Your family members can also accompany you, and no problems at all with that. So now let's see if we have any more questions. So there is a question on Instagram that is from Shazia Mahin. 70 points for 499 visa. Can I expect an invitation? So Shazia, it depends on your occupation and depends on which state you're targeting. So if you can probably elaborate more, then I might be able to answer your question a bit, in depth. So the next question is from Keta Patel. What is current situation about 491 put file with medical from Feb 2023? Expected time to get the visa. Now we have seen, in normally if you are in medical field, then we have seen the visas being granted in 6 to 8 months time. So you should expect an outcome very soon actually. And if you don't, then you can always request the department to work on it. The next question is from Urvi. What are the chances of getting PR in marketing with 90 points? So in marketing, to get a PR, now let's say if you are on 482 visa, you can apply for 186 TRT stream. And if your company is heavily sponsor, you can also go for a 482 visa right now. 2 years later, your company can also sponsor for 482. And also in marketing specialist, you can apply for a skills assessment. And if you have 90 points, you can also apply for 189 and 190 EOI. Sorry, not 189 because that's on a short-term list. So you can't apply for 189, but in 190, you can apply for an expression of interest in New South Wales if you're in New South Wales or whatever state you are in. And your chances with 90 points is great because I think, but the last invite that we have seen was at around 95 or 100 points. But yes, 90 points is not bad. I would still encourage you to continue to try and increase your points. The next question is from Ali Turi. Can you please tell us about the advanced diploma PR pathway in future? Now, so advanced diploma of civil construction would lead you to a skills assessment as a civil engineering draftsperson. And with that skill assessment, that occupation is on a medium and long-term list. That means you can apply for 189 EOI, you can apply for 190 EOI. If 491 is also available, you can also apply for 491 nomination. You can apply for a 491 family sponsorship stream as well. So that's also another option. And also, if you have a job, you can also get sponsorship for a 482 visa. You can get a sponsorship if you have 3 years of experience. You can get an sponsorship for a 186 direct entry stream as well. So there are multiple options you'll have, but it will depend on when you complete. But the chances for a civil engineering draft person, right now, it looks really great because we have seen in last 1 year that we have seen a lot of invitations under this occupation as well, even low as 65 points. So the chances are really great in the future, but it depends on the competition as well. A lot of people are studying this course. You might also want to see diverse occupations as well or diverse options, depending on your choices. Shivam Kanda, I am a chef. My points for 190 NSW is 70 and 189 is 65. Any chances? I believe the last invite for a chef was at higher points. So Shivam, I would recommend you to see if you can increase the points. Also, you can see if you can look at other state nomination options as well. If you would like to relocate and if you have enough work experience, your company can also sponsor you for a 186 direct entry stream, and that's also a permanent visa. So you can also look at the options that you might have for this category. Next question is from Jason. How long does it take to take the grant after Section 56 request? So generally it's around a month or so, but it depends again who is your case officer, how busy are they, and which team is it allocated to. So, but generally we see that it's 1 to 3 months you get an outcome after you get a Section 56 request. Next question is from Aman. What are the chances for finance manager on 85 points, 189 and 190 in NSW? Now, if it was a last financial year, we have seen invitations at 90 points or so. But in this financial year, we haven't seen anything happening yet. So I wouldn't say it doesn't have a chance, and I wouldn't say it has a really great chance. So you are in between where you have a, potential chances, yes, but it's definitely not no and definitely not yes. So you're in between. If you had, let's say, 95 or 100 points, your chances would increase. But as of now, your chances is around 60-70% that you'll get an invitation. And that also depends on how the NSW is going to conduct the invitation round, whether they're going to focus on occupations in any accounting related occupations. Right. Next question is from Silent Beats. How many times take for skills assessment from TRA? So if you are applying for a TRA job ready program, then you're expecting around 12 months plus. And if you're applying for a TRA migration skill assessment pathway with 3 years of experience, you can expect around 3 months or so. So I hope, guys, this session has provided you an understanding and detailed understanding about 482 visa, 186 visa, 494 visa. And if you have further questions, you can always reach to your nearest Aussizz Group branch. And our aim to create these sessions is to create awareness in the international people's community in Australia, where they can educate themselves about the criteria. They can, make the right informed decision whether you choose our services or not. That's a secondary. But our aim is to create awareness about certain criteria and certain visas, to ensure that people don't make mistakes in choosing the right pathways, because we come across a lot of time where cases has been just, applicants make mistakes in making the right decision, and then at the end there is very less that we could do to fix them. And sometimes we are able to fix it, but sometimes we are not. So that's why our aim is to create awareness for you to learn about these things. Sorry, I've got one more question from Silent Beat. I am applying for electrical engineering technician post around 4 months, but not any response. I would suggest that you probably want to follow up with TRA, and you could also apply for, obviously we have to check your eligibility for VEDSS, but VEDSS has also got an option for an offshore skill assessment program. So you could also choose those options too to apply for, skill assessment. But now that you've already applied for with TRA, you should follow up with them, because 4 months is, I think you are already above the processing time. So, guys, as I said, please don't forget to like and follow us on Instagram and social media pages like Facebook, because we keep posting informative videos and informative posts about different visas to create awareness. And we really appreciate all your support that you have provided, and all the support that we get from our clients, and the love that we get from you guys is really great. It really motivates us to continue to do the same thing again and again, and provide a right advice, and encourage the international people to not get demotivated, who are in Australia on either on a student visa or on a temporary visa. Everyone would find one or the other way to get their permanent pathways. It's just we have to put in right efforts and make right decisions. So I hope you enjoyed this session, and we wish you a very great evening tonight, and we look forward to see you in our next session. Thank you for joining us.